The Complete Leader Program is a 14-month leadership development program that we've had operating for a few years now, where we help small groups of leaders grow their own leadership capacities. The purpose of the program is threefold. First of all, we want to help leaders understand themselves better and understand the unique contributions that they can make as leaders in their organizations. Secondly, we want them to understand other people better so that they can organize around strengths and neutralize weaknesses, in the words of the famous late Peter Drucker. And the third purpose of the program is to help these leaders develop a whole battery of skills and have access to a group of resources that they can utilize for the rest of their career as they encounter different challenges on the leadership journey. Today, joining me for our conversation are a couple of our senior facilitators. First, Whit Mitchell, who's from Hanover, New Hampshire, part of the Price Associates team and a senior facilitator for the Complete Leader Program, and Andy Johnson, who probably by the time a lot of our audience sees this, you'll be Dr. Andy Johnson, finishing up his PhD program, another senior facilitator for the program. So first of all, thanks for both of you joining us. We've had a lot of experiences with the Complete Leader Program. Tell me, first of all, Andy, a little bit about how you view the structure of the program and how it serves a leader on their own personal journey.
So the structure is really helpful because we work over those 14 months with those leaders in a cohort. And so again, I think what's been most helpful, as I observe their growth, is the way that they sort of cross-pollinate each other. I know we've noticed that quite a bit. So it's not just them learning from us as facilitators, it's learning from each other.
Yeah, and us learning from them as well.
Yeah, we get a lot out of it.
Yeah, and so part of that is that it's not just a lecture kind of a setting.
Right.
There are a lot of different things that are a part of it. And one of the great contributions that you've made, not just as a facilitator, but also creating content for the program, Whit, is incorporating experiential learning as a part of driving home the messages that we're talking about in the curriculum. So tell me a little bit about how you got involved in experiential learning and how we incorporate it in the program.
It came about because in high school and grade school, I really wasn't a great learner through reading or listening to teachers or professors. And once I graduated from college, I went through an outdoor experiential event that lasted 5 days. And all of a sudden I realized, this is how I learn. Where has this been in my education? And I had the great fortune of working with another organization called Growing Edge, and we were working with United Airlines before 9/11 for 2 or 3 years and doing a lot of outdoor in the 80s, team building, blindfolds, climbing trees. And as much as fun as it was, we were learning a lot about people's behaviors and leadership abilities because we give them a problem to solve and we give them constraints and we give them certain resources and we'd watch how they did it. And then we'd sit around as a group and talk about, how was this like work? What did you see here that you did well, that you also do well back at work? And what could you do differently when you return to work? And the light bulb started to go on, and people had analogies between what they saw on the team and what they see back at work, and then they made a game plan for change.
That's one of the things I've really appreciated about what you've brought to the program, Whit, is that I've been through a lot of that. We called it team building, where you'd go work on a ropes course for a day or something. And it was always great fun, but I never saw anybody that helped us to really apply it to work in a meaningful way, that it actually changed our behaviors or increased our awareness of what was going on in the workplace. And you've done a terrific job with that.
Thanks, Ron.
So that's an important part of the program.
Yes, it is.
And of course, the program is built around the book, The Complete Leader, everything you need to become a high-performing leader, and the resources that are available at thecompleteleader.org. Yeah. But Andy, another big part of the program is the way that these cohorts break into smaller teams and create their own presentations.
Right.
And we've had some great experiences with that. I'm thinking of one cohort we were working with, and they were going to do a presentation on the topic of goal achievement.
Yeah.
And they sort of surprised us, didn't
Right.
they? What did they tell us about
Yeah,
what
I
they
was
did?
very pleasantly surprised. So they're supposed to do a presentation on goal achievement. And for those of you that don't know, Ron and I are quite different around this, Whit. And so the group is 4 folks, and they break up in 2 and 2, essentially. And they gave us kind of 2 mini presentations. The first one was, we love goals, and goals are great. That fits more with who Ron is. The other group basically gives us a presentation which says, goals are overrated and I hate them. And so we've got to think of a different way. So they pulled articles about goals, like goals gone wild and dumb goals and things like that. And I was sitting there myself. I learned a lot that day. And I'm saying, like, I've always kind of hated goals. But this second group of presenters in the group of 4, they were speaking right to me. And I figured out that day that people are different around the way they view goal achievement. And so people that have different kinds of drives track differently with that whole, competency. And so I learned a ton. I went home, looked up all the articles they quoted, and it was a great day in the program.
Yeah, and I think this is one of the things that we continually learn is that the best way to learn is to teach.
Right.
And oftentimes when they do a presentation, they're teaching us as well. So I'm going to ask you each to share 1 or 2 of your favorite stories in a moment. But 3 different components of the program, 3 different parts of the tactics around the way we do the program are, first of all, we're focused on giving them practical leadership skills that they put into practice immediately at work, whether it has to do with how they lead other people or how they get things done or how they think through decisions or solve problems, things like that. The second component of the program is that we want it to be really interactive because we know that they learn more. We don't want them just sitting in at a desk or at a table and taking notes and listening all that. There is some of that. But we want to mix it up so that there's always something new happening that keeps them engaged throughout the 10 days of the program, of course, that are spread out over the 14 months. And then I think the third thing that we've both seen in the program that's a really important component of it is that by having these cohorts of 12 to 20 people, it's about building relationships too. Yeah. And not just building these relationships that are going to be valuable to them in the future, but also the skills of building relationships. So they learn a lot about giving and receiving feedback, and they learn about collaborating together, creating things together, encouraging each other, helping each other get better by pointing out all those things. And we really patterned it after what we saw as the best practices in the best MBA programs around the world, except for this is an EMBA style program that focuses on leadership skills that they're going to apply in the workplace right away. Yep. So I gave you a little bit of time to think about it, Whit. What's one of your favorite stories of one of the cohorts that we've worked with? That's okay. You can take your time to think about it. I can tell you one of the ones that I love that you were involved with. Yeah. It was a group of engineers we were working with who were complaining that their corporate office wasn't being clear with them, and we divided them into 2 groups, and we had them work on a project, an exercise, where they actually ended up mirroring the thing they were complaining about coming from the corporate office.
Yeah. I'm blank.
Yeah?
I don't have one.
Okay. So I
have one.
Go ahead. Let's go to Andy, and then we can come.
Okay.
And we're in extra time, as they say in football.
Very good. Very good. Yeah. So one of the cohorts you and I worked with, Ron, so it was an executive leadership team. You'll recall who it was immediately. There was a woman, and so she was essentially the executive assistant to the CEO. And I remember her trepidation. Part of the program, we have them put these presentations together, as you know, and she probably hadn't done a presentation since, maybe high school? And that had been maybe 40 years ago. Mm-hmm. So she was pretty nervous about the whole thing. And I remember her hemming and hawing. And so she really stepped up to the plate, and she came the day of the presentation the first time, and she had some sort of hand-done drawings, if I recall, and some charts and some graphs that she had made. And she got through it, and she did much better, I think, than she thought she would, but she struggled a bit. And what I noticed over time is as she presented the second time and the third time, by the third time, it was just evident within the room. At the end of the day, we said, "What did you notice?" And everybody in the room, including us, said, wow, her presentation skills have, greatly multiplied. So it was just really exciting, and she was beaming with pride. I just really recall, I'll always recall the expression on her face. She was so proud that after all these years, she had made this progress. So
and this is one of the big benefits that we see come through all of the cohorts that we work with. Right. Their presentation skills go to a higher level, and there's a certain presence that they begin to develop, which is an important part of becoming a leader of influence.
Well, the other part of that, Ron, if you remember back to some of the presentations that we've seen, is also the feedback piece, which you touched on. So I remember early on in the first month when one of the women came back. She was woman in the HR department, and she had a presentation that made her a little nervous. And we had an engineer in the audience, and we gave each of the people some clarifying ways to look at the different presentation to give feedback. And this fellow was an engineer, and he wrote 3 pages, 4 pages of feedback to deliver to this HR woman. So he's a very specific, detailed, a little bit cold and blunt, right to the point.
Wow.
And he's delivering to an HR woman who was flowery and outgoing, and the feedback as he delivered it, she got further and further and further down in her chair, and the look on her face and her head went down. And this was the first presentation. So I spent a lot of time working with him on how to deliver feedback where he'd get results at work, and she worked on her presentation. And if you remember her last presentation in the 14th month, she showed up and had put together something that when she was done, the room was silent, and there were tears from some of the participants in how she grew in her presentation skills, and he grew in his feedback. And his feedback to her was 4 pages of some pretty positive ways in which she'd changed over time.
Yeah, and I think that was a great example that sometimes we find people have tremendous capacity, but they need help learning how to express it effectively. So this person in particular turned out to be a very effective leader. Yeah. He just needed a little help in developing the skills for how he communicated and how he articulated that. So another important part of the program that we haven't touched on yet is that when people go through the Complete Leader program, they each have an individual coach during those 14 months as well. And they have one-on-one coaching sessions with that person, usually over the phone, occasionally in person,
Right.
but throughout the period. And I know that you've both had opportunities to do a lot of coaching. Tell me a little bit about how that has worked out for you with somebody who's going through the Complete Leader program.
Well, what's great is in the Complete Leader program, we use some of the instruments to give them some understanding of their own, to increase their self-awareness. And one of the things we've been able to do is once they understand themselves, then we encourage them to have 3 or 4 direct reports. Also take the profiles and the assessments.
So can I stop you for
Yeah.
a second? Because when you said instruments, all of a sudden I went to my dentist's office.
Yeah.
And all those instruments.
Oh, thank you, Ron.
Oh, so you're saying the instruments are a way that this person can self-assess, can self-evaluate.
Self-assessment
Yeah.
would be a better way to say it.
Great.
To increase.
Okay,
Thank
good.
you, Ron.
No, that's okay.
And the coaching part comes in where once they understand how to read their assessment and understand their own behaviors and have their direct reports do the same, I've gotten great joy and great results in teaching them how to read the assessments of their direct reports and then go at it very differently in how they're coaching them to get to the results they're looking for.
So this just has this cascading effect.
Yeah.
It's not just the people that are in the program, but it becomes the people that they're supervising, or maybe sometimes even their boss. They're developing more effective relationships and working on communication skills and better organization of people to get great results. It really is quite an experience. And Andy, do you have a coaching story you'd like to share?
Well, I do a lot of work with conflict, and so a lot of times within the program, one of the competencies we deal with is conflict management, or I like to add to that conflict prevention. So I've had a lot of opportunities to deal with people around those same instruments or assessments and helping them understand the different ways that people are going to approach conflict in the workplace. And so it's super helpful to them to see that that other person with whom they're conflicting is not necessarily something wrong with them. They're just different. So I think it normalizes lots of those differences, helps communication, helps the way we begin to view each other. So again, like you've observed, Whit, I think it's sort of a holistic approach, and it permeates beyond the cohort into the organization, or if it's a public cohort, it goes into all those organizations. So it's kind of fun to infect, larger groups of people with the work that we get to do.
Yeah, that's great. You guys have both done a great job of triggering extra thoughts in my mind. Do you have one more thing you want
I
to
just
say?
wanted to add, and when we have the coaching, we have access to the Complete Leader website. So we're pulling some of the competencies from there in our coaching work and just following the program along. So they might pick persuasion as one of the skills they're trying to learn. So the website is just loaded with blogs and videos and material content for them to improve upon that skill.
Yeah, and that you both have triggered one other thought, one more piece of the program, and that is that we have experts come in as special guests to spend a day with that cohort. They build relationships with them. They usually do a presentation. We're just trying to create a lot of opportunities that are going to expand their awareness of the leadership journey and how they can be effective and how they can become the best version of themselves. Yeah. So I appreciate you chatting with me a little bit about it today. If you'd like to find out more about the Complete Leader program, you can write to us at info@thecompleteleader.org. Again, that's info@thecompleteleader.org.